Hare Krishna, everybody. I think I'll just need the share screen share option, if that's possible. So, thank you for joining, everyone, and coming for morning program. I thought about speaking about a topic that became somewhat more vital or highlighted for me since this like slight change and move to Mexico City, humility and humiliation. And I thought to read a verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where humility is expressed. And this is Adi Lila text, Adi Lila chapter 7, text 89 to 90. And before we start, I'm going to recite the invocation for the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And if anyone would like to join me, the Sattva Institute to chant with me. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chanda Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vendra.
Jaya Dvaita Chanda Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vendra.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chanda Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
So this is a prayer invocation. Every literature has a specific invocation, like we chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya or the Srimad Bhagavatam and other literatures. So this literature, the invocation, addresses Lord Chaitanya, Krishna's incarnation, God's incarnation 500 years ago, who came in the form of his devotee to exemplify and show us how to perform the process of Bhakti Yoga. And together with his associates, Nityananda, Nityananda, Gadadhar, Bhaktacharya, and Srivas Pandit, the 5 associates. Some of you are perhaps already offering food stuff or have a picture of these 5 figures, are probably familiar with that. So text 89 to 90 reads as follows. Svedakampa Roma Charshu Gada Vivaranya.
Svedakampa Roma Charshu Gada Vivaranya.
Unmada Vishada Dhairaya Garva Harsha Dinayam.
Unmada Vishada Dhairya Garva Harsha Dinayam.
Yeta Bhava Prema Bhakta Granera Nachaya.
Yeta Bhava Prema Bhakta Granera Nachaya.
Krishnara Ananda Dhamrita Sagare Bhasaya.
Krishnara Ananda Dhamrita Sagare Bhasaya.
Svedakampa Rama Charshu Gada Gada Vivarnya.
Svedakampa Rama Charshu Gada Vivarnya.
Anmada Vishada Dhirya Garva Harsha Dinayam.
Unmada Vishada Dhairya Garva Harsha Dinayam.
Eta Bhava Prema Bhakta Gena Jena Chaya. Krishnara Vrita Sagare Vasaya.
Krishnara Vrita Sagare Vasaya.
Svedakampa Rama Charshu Gada Gada Vivaranya.
Svedakampa Rama Charshu Gada Vivaranya.
Unamada Vishada Dhiraya Garva Harsha Dinaya.
Unmada Vishada Dairya Garvahashadanya
Etapale Prema Bhakta Ginara Nichaya
Sabhave Prema Bhakta Ganare Machaya
Vishnera Anandamrita Sagare Bhashaya
Vishnadhanandamrita Sagare Bhakshaya Vedakampa Romanchastru Gadgada Vaivanya Vedakampa Romanchastru Gadgada Vaivanya Unmada Vishada Daya Garvaha Sudanya Unmada Vishada Daya Garvaha Sudanya Ekave Prema Bhakta Ganire Nachaya Ekave Prema Bhakta Ganire Nachaya Krishnanandamrita Sagare Vasaya Krishnanandamrita Sagare Vasaya Sweda Kampa Romancha Gadgada Vaivarnya Sweda Kampa Romancha Gadgada Vaivarnya Unmada Vishada Darya Garva Harshadanya Unmada Vishada Darya Garva Harshadanya Etabhave Prema Bhakta Ganire Nachaya Etabhave Prema Bhakta Ganire Nachaya Krishnanandam Rita Sagare Vasaya Krishnanandam Rita Sagare Vasaya
Svedakampa Romanchasu Gadgada Vaivanya
Vedakampa Romanchasru Gadgada Vaivanya
Unmada Vishada Daya Gava Aushadanya
Unmada Vishada Dairya Garva Harshadanya
Etapave Prema Bhakta Ganile Nachaya
Etabhave Prema Bhakta Ganire Nachaya
Krishnanandamrita Sagari Vashaya
Krishnanandamrita Sagare Vasaya
Svedakampa Roman Shashru Gadgada Vaivanya Svedakampa Roman Shashru Gadgada Vaivanya Unmada Vishadadaya Garva Harshadanya Unmada Vishadadanya Garva Harshadanya Ektabhave Prema Bhakta Ganere Nachaya Ektabhave Prema Bhakta Ganere Nachaya Krishnara Anandamrita Sagare Basaya Krishnara Anandamrita Sagare Basaya Sveda Kampara Machashru Radara Vaivarnya Sveda Kampara Manchashru Gadgada Vaivanya Umada Vishada Darya Garva Harsha Danya Unmada Vishada Darya Garva Harsha Danya Etapave Prema Bhakta Garne Nachaya Etapave Prema Bhakta Ganere Nachaya Krishna Ananda Mirta Sargare Bashaya Krishna Ananda Mirta Sagare Basaya
Seda Kampa Roman Chashu Gada Gada Vanarya
Sveda Kampa Roman Chashru Gadgada Vaivanya
Unmada Vishada Darya Garva Hashadanya
Unmada Vishada Danya Garva Harshadanya
Etabhave Prima Bhakta Ganare Nachaya
Etabhave Prema Bhakta Ganire Nachaya
Vishnara Anandamrita Sagare Bashaya
Krishnanandamrita Sagare Vasaya
Sveda Kampa Romanchashru Gadgada Vaivarnya
Vedagrupa Roman Shastru Gadgada Vaibhavya
Unmada Vishada Darya Garva Harsha Dahinya
Unmada Vishada Dharya Garva Harshadanya
Eta Bhave Prema Bhakta Ganere Nachaya
Eta Bhave Prema Bhakta Ganira Namchaya
Krishnera Nandamrita Sagare Vasaya
Krishnera Nandamrita Sagare Vashaya.
So we're going to do the word. Sveda,
Veda,
perspiration,
perspiration,
kampa,
Nampa,
trembling,
trembling,
romacha,
Romancha,
standing of the hairs on the body,
standing of the hairs on the body,
ashru,
Ashuru,
tears,
tears,
gadgada,
Gadgada,
fluttering,
faltering,
vaivarnya,
Laivanya,
changing of the bodily color,
changing of bodily color,
unmada,
Umada,
madness,
madness,
vishada,
Vishara,
melancholy,
melancholy,
tiraya,
Dhyana,
patience,
patience,
garva,
Nava,
pride,
pride,
harsha,
Harsha,
joyfulness,
joyfulness,
danya,
kindness,
humbleness,
humbleness,
eta,
Eta,
in many ways,
in many ways,
bhave,
Bhave,
in ecstasy,
in ecstasy,
prema,
Prema,
love of Godhead,
the love of Godhead,
bhakta gamira,
Bhakta Ganira,
onto the devotees,
unto the devotee,
nachaya,
Naya,
causes to dance,
Bhakti,
krishnera,
Krishnera,
of Lord Krishna,
of Lord Krishna,
ananda,
Ananda,
transcendental bliss,
Transcendental,
amrita, nectar,
Nectar,
sagar,
Bhakti,
in the ocean,
in the ocean,
vasaya,
Bhakti,
floats.
love,
There's a really bad background noise that's very disturbing.
Oh, sorry, let me try to fix it.
Yeah, it stopped for a moment.
like many brahmacharis, they do, but
Is it better?
Well, it was better for 5 minutes, I'm sorry. And it's like a buzzing. Like you go motor over and then
Just a second.
it stopped. Yeah. Yes. Wonderful.
Yes. Better. Yeah.
Okay. The buzzing stopped.
Now? Okay, great. Apologize for that. Translation. Perspiration, trembling, standing on end of one's bodily hairs, tears, flattering voice, fading complexion, madness, melancholy, patience, pride, joy, and humility. These are various natural symptoms of ecstasy, of ecstatic love of Godhead, which causes a devotee to dance and float in an ocean of transcendental bliss while chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sri Jiva Goswami in his Priti Sandarbha 66 explains the stage of love of Godhead. Bhagavat Priti Rupa Virti Maya Mai Na Bhavati Kim Tari Svarupa Shakti Ananda Rupa Yad Ananda Pradhina Sri Bhagavanapti. Similarly, in the 69th text, he offers further explanation. Tad evam pritir lakshanam Chitta Drastasya Roma Hershi Dakshakam Kati Chich Jate Pi Cheta Dhava Roma Harsha Diksha Harsha Dike Vana Chet Asya Shudhis Taptina Taptana Bhakte Smayag Avirtavava Iti Japitav Asya Sadhir Namachaya Taptarya Prati Yag Priti Taptayam Cha Ata Eva Mita Svabhaviki Chiti Tad Vishavnam. Transcendental love of Godhead is not under the jurisdiction of the material energy, for it is the transcendental bliss and pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since the Supreme Lord is also under the influence of transcendental bliss, when one comes in touch with such bliss in love of Godhead, one's heart melts, and the symptoms of this are standing the hairs on end, etc. Sometimes a person thus melts and manifests these transcendental symptoms, yet at the same time is not well behaved in his personal transactions. This indicates that he has not yet reached complete perfection in devotional life. In other words, a devotee who dances in ecstasy, but after dancing and crying appears to be attracted to material affairs, has not yet reached the perfection of devotional service, which is called Ashya Shuddhi, or the perfection of existence. One who attains the perfection of existence is completely averse to material enjoyment and engrossed in transcendental love of Godhead. It is therefore to be concluded that the ecstatic symptoms of Ashya Shuddhi are visible when a devotee's service has no material cause and is purely spiritual in nature. These are characteristics of transcendental love of Godhead, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 2nd chapter, 6th verse. Savai pumsha paro dharmo yato bhaktiradokshaje ahaitukiya pratiyata yatma suprasidhi. That religion is best which causes its followers to become ecstatic in love of God, and free from material impediments, for this alone can completely satisfy the self. Om Agyantaranandasyam Gyanashala Shalakaya Chakshuramanitajena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamaya Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavansha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam tam sajivam sadvaitam savadutam parijana saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padanna Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sidhu Dina Badhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopita Kanta Radha Kanta Namoshate Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radha Virdavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Shute Devi Pranamai Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasinam Bhaevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnaveyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachaniye Nirvishisha Shunyavadi Paschadeschatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Garadra Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining. And before I start, I wanted to welcome a new guest that we have here in our morning program community, Puja Devi. Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Puja Devi contacted me about, I think, a week or two ago, and she expressed the desire to get in touch with community practitioners of Krishna consciousness who are authentic, vulnerable, and showing up in their practice. And I immediately thought, okay, why not to invite her to our morning programs? And that's something that attracted me from the very beginning to this community in 2019. And I didn't quite sense what it was. I wasn't as, I think, as specific in the criterias, like vulnerability, authenticity. These qualities sort of were under the carpet in my practice at that time, at least. But I did sense something different, and I guess this sharing now that I wanted to share with all of you is part of a process that I'm going through, sort of like an extension of the program that Anasui invited me to lead the discussion at Prabhupada's house a few weeks ago, just before I left. That was around acceptance, how much accepted I felt in the Sattva community, and around all the principles that Mother Malini and Indira Govinda Prabhu are sharing and teaching us. And this is sort of an extension, because I see that directly relating of how much humility can turn into humiliation or a dark concept or a dark practice if we're not meeting ourselves where we at. And this verse by itself, it's very interesting. I had a different verse in mind. I had a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, but I was preparing for sharing this point. I was reading that verse over and over again, and I didn't quite connect to that. So I made a little research and was looking in different places where the word humility is emphasized or touched. And immediately when I read this verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I thought, okay, this is really this really touches in my heart, especially the purport, but specifically also the how the word humility used in this verse, in this text. I think the word in Sanskrit, what was the word in Sanskrit that signified humility? Humbleness, it's translated, danya, and it's one of the symptoms of ecstasy. Like who would have thought that an ecstatic principle of life is to be humble, right? Like I personally, perhaps many of us grow in a society that humility and meekness, it's a weakness, right? If I show my humble side to someone at work, even sometimes in my family, to my wife or to my husband, they're gonna utilize that to crush me down, maybe, or to humiliate me, right? And that's actually something that connects me to my experience of using substances before Krishna consciousness. I was doing different things, and one really profound experience that I had is an experience of humility, and I was questioning that, and I was questioning my relationship with that, and how come I felt so good being humble under like an artificial type of ecstasy. But since then and after, when I touched Krishna consciousness, it's something that really stood up. And as being situated here in this context of humility as one of the, we know in Krishna consciousness and Bhakti Yoga there are different types of ecstatic symptoms. Some of you maybe already experienced that. You chant, you read read the verse of the Bhagavatam, or you do some reading, or you chant your rounds, or kirtan, or maybe you take prasadam, and then different bodily symptoms are manifesting. Like the author shared here, trembling, standing, the hairs would stand on end, tears, fluttering of the voice, fading complexion, like I think it's like changing of the colors, and so on and so on. So humility is one of these principles, and I think in general, when we think about devotees, what I noticed from the very beginning, which quality or which opulence, I would say, like stands out when we meet devotees. When I met devotees for the first time, before I even considered the practice, before I thought I was coming to Krishna consciousness, I was more immersed into yoga and stretching and different maybe austerities once in a while. But really the idea of bhakti was not even like on my mind, because I heard that this is type of sentimentalism and this is for emotional people, whatever. Later on, reading Prabhupada's books, I actually realized that bhakti has a much deeper and grounded and philosophical, intellectual approach. So that changed, but still, there was one quality that from the very beginning stood out, and that is humility. Humility. I mean, the prasadam was great, undoubtedly. The knowledge fascinated me. So many other things. But even later, when I was exposed deeper to these concepts of what is everyone's unique individual experience in Krishna consciousness, it became more apparent that really the humility that devotees exhibit, no one can match that. No one can match that. Maybe some can match, even let's say the prasadam, right? Okay, let's put aside maybe the spiritual potency, but yeah, someone can learn. Someone can go on Habar's YouTube channel, right? A very popular cooking channel that I go to, and I learn different recipes, and he can sort of imitate the different recipes and cook it even better than me, or the knowledge, right? There's so many philosophers that their approach to intellectualism is much more deeper and intricate and maybe captivating, but no one can be humble. No one can be humble as devotees, and but there is a little but, right? What is that but? Is that line that touched me in the purport, that sometimes devotees manifest the symptoms, as we describe. Humility is one of these symptoms. Sometimes a person thus melts and manifests these transcendental symptoms, and yet at the same time is not very well behaved in his personal transactions. So we don't have to reach the top level of bhakti yoga to manifest the symptoms. And in fact, in Nectar of Devotion, it's explained that there's what is called a shadow symptoms of ecstasy, or I think dry or wet. I don't exactly remember. But these symptoms of ecstasy are manifested by the mercy of our spiritual master, or the person who connects us to Krishna. So it's not exactly our ecstasy, but at the same time, it is given to us freely out of charge, just like we chant for Lord Chaitanya, Namo Mahavadane Krishna, Prema Pradayate Krishna, Krishna Chaitanya, Name Korata Bashta Mahadev. In this incarnation, Krishna, you appeared in the most magnanimous approach to your part and parcels, and you freely giving Krishna Prem. I think in the verse 2 there was a part where the author touched pure love of God at Krishna Prem. So the highest type of ecstasy in yoga, right? In yoga, there are different stages: yama, niyama, asana. So samadhi. Beyond samadhi, there is what is called prema, and that prema is love of God. And Krishna, in his form of his devotee, is ready to give it to us freely, free out of charge, and anyone can experience that. But at the same time, being in the process of bhakti yoga and really cultivating these qualities independently from the mercy of our spiritual master, or independently of our association, dependently simply on our purity, that ecstasy becomes very steady, fully manifested, and we can give it even to others, right? But yes, but then there's a question. Okay, what do we do until we reach that point? What do we do until we purify all our material desires? And like in the end, Prabhupada was explaining in the purport how is concluded that these symptoms, what is it? It is therefore to be concluded that the ecstatic symptoms of Asya Shuddhi are visible when a devotee service has no material causes. We have to start somewhere, right? We have to start with some material causes. So how do we go about these ecstatic symptoms without jeopardizing their purity? How do we go about our process, going through our material desires, accepting ourselves where we at, and maintaining enough purity to really be joyful, to really be happy while executing our practice, our service to our spiritual master, to our community, to our friends, family, and so on. So this is where I sort of find connection between the last sharing that I did in Prabhupada's house and humility and humiliation. That so long we accept ourselves, where we at, and we are aware of what is let's say our boundary, what is respectful of ourselves, what would be enough respectful of ourselves to maintain the humility and not to jump over our level of tolerance with others and boundaries and so on, then our humility is not going to turn into humiliation. What is humiliation? From my understanding, how we see humiliation is that, first of all, no one can humiliate us. Humiliation is something that we own. We always own that. We not if someone I think there's this joke, like a Buddhist joke that I heard once, that let's say someone gives you a gift, and in the gift there is an insult. Someone insults you. So Buddha, he says, if you give me a gift and I don't accept that, I give it to you back, then to who belongs the insult? And we can see that perhaps as humiliation or something we don't like to receive from someone. So the insult that belongs to the person that gave it to us. So we have the power, we have the choice to humiliate ourselves or to respect ourselves and remain humble from where we are at. So this is sort of the really the power and the strength that I see in meeting myself with my material desires. Like at the end, Prabhupada connects this verse from the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Savai Pumsha Parodharmo Yato Bhaktir Aidokshaji Ahaitu Kya Partiyata Yayatma Suprasidati. That the perfection, right, that when we completely unmotivated, right, but we can still reach that relatively sufficient perfection that will give us this pleasure of devotional service, will give us the ecstasy of being humble, give us the ecstasy of experiencing the different these different other symptoms, right? Like the author was mentioning, perspiration, trembling, all these different manifestations, and yet maintain this comfortable zone where we don't have to jeopardize our respecting ourselves, jeopardizing our sorry, blacked out. Jeopardizing our right to be happy and content where we are, and because what I see that can happen actually and what I saw actually from my personal experience, I was part of a different association growing up in Krishna consciousness, and where these values of meeting myself where I'm at, or distinguishing between humility and humiliation, there was a lot of emphasis of mostly austerities and stretching myself and getting out of my comfort zone, which was very beneficial. And I think like Mother Malani, after the sharing that I did in Prabhupada's house, she sort of gave me a feedback, like perhaps without all that tolerance that I built and that strength to stretch myself, I will not be able to really stretch myself like I stretched myself in the last year in living in Alachua and associating with all of you. So I'm thankful for that. But yet I do feel that I missed out on something very vital that I see is extremely healthy and vital to anyone who comes to this world, regardless of spiritual practice or radical responsibility. Thank you, Jim. Regardless of his inclination to spirituality or not, is to accept ourselves where we are and see really which boundaries or which environment really suits us to respect these small tastes of ecstasy that God gives us to increase our love and devotion to Him. Because otherwise, that's what I experienced, that when I would not respect myself, when I would stretch myself to please others, or stretch myself to, of course, there is a healthy stretch to please others, but I perceived myself doing that to such an extent that I would feel literally abused. And I was not abused by a particular person, but I was abused by myself, by my tendency to give my power to people who will not respect the stretch that I would do in my spiritual life or in my material life. And then my humility would turn to this dark force of really humiliating myself and putting myself down and not respecting myself and not valuing myself ultimately. And I see like a direct line between these 3 points of acceptance, self-acceptance, being humble, and valuing myself and valuing others and their humility from that point. Let's see if I wanted to share anything else. Yes, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to share, and also I am planning to really extrapolate about this point on my channel and address more what is the difference between being humble and letting others humiliate ourselves, or being accepting humiliation. And I wanted to ask you for support and in the way of sharing what do you think is the difference, and perhaps different points that touched you from what I was sharing or from the verse. I invite sharing and feedback and like that. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Leonard has his hand raised.
Okay, please, then go on, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Rama. You hear me? Ramachandra all the way in Mexico. Okay. So one comment I have about this passage from humility to humiliation that you're talking about. You talked about how if somebody else humiliates you, you have a choice. You can give it back to them. You don't have to let it affect you. You can not accept it. And then in talking about yourself, humiliating yourself mentally, my first thought was, well, if you have this voice in your head that's beating you over the head and knocking you down, where's that coming from? You know, you don't have to accept that either. That's not, maybe it's certainly not coming from your soul, right? It's just your mind playing tricks. So in the same way that you can reject somebody else trying to humiliate you, why not reject your own self trying to humiliate you? You know, that's my thought. And I appreciate your openness and vulnerability in your sharing, Chandra, always. And yeah, that's my thought on that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, man. Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. Yeah, we not. It's it's not like our it's not our duty or like accepting someone's humiliation. We can be responsible and choose to reject these like dark parts of ourselves that put us down, and or someone else's, and stay in integrity and stay on our contract, being valuable and being humble in a pure and innocent, beautiful way. Hare Krishna. Yes, Mother Malini, you have your right.
Yes. Thank you for class. Thank you for your sharing, humility in your sharing. And Jim made a comment about radical responsibility. And humility is so directly connected with radical responsibility. To be responsible for everything and being willing to be responsible for my shortcoming. Because often humiliation usually doesn't come from others. It comes from our expectation of ourselves, of being bigger than we are, being purer than we are, being more gentle than we are, being whatever expectation one after another, fighting the reality of who we are. I appreciate Pooja also made a comment in the chat, and I really appreciate that because the strength of the pure devotee is in their humility, and in their humility, they are okay. Like they are okay sharing. I'm a fool. I'm not capable of controlling my senses. I am an idiot. I cannot understand this. And there is a difference with low self-worth and self-defeating beliefs and just go for the reality. But really, I'm really fallen here. And often in my class, I share that being born in Kali Yoga, really, the reality is that it should be very easy to be humble because we have no qualification for austerity, no qualification for truthfulness, no qualification for cleanliness, no qualification in terms of gambling, cheating, like there is no good qualities that we are born with. So intrinsically, it kind of it can make sense that we will be very humble, but the opposite happens. The more fallen we are, the more it seems that we want to hold on to imaginary expectation of the way we should be, and that's where the humility takes place, and in that gap of guilt and shame. Yeah.
Yeah, we have all the support from where we are at to be humble, like the millennium, the Kali Yuga. Like there's nothing to be proud here about really, and still the false ego really attached to pride and or false humility, these other two extremes. Thank you, Mother Melanie. Yeah, thank you for mentioning Pooja's comment too. She wrote, I think someone who is humble is someone who is always teachable. You can be humble and not accept disrespect. Humility creates strength. Yes, humility is our strength. And Parampara also, he shared, it is interesting because on first thought, I don't think humility and humiliation are not related, but then thinking they do share the same root word, so they must. I'm thinking the distinction is choice. Both are about being in a lesser, lower position. Humility, choosing a lesser position, and humiliation is if we are resisting the lesser position in resisting humility. I really appreciate this. I too, I didn't actually notice that they share the same root word. And yeah, I appreciate this last part of your comment, how it's choosing about choice and how we choose. Are we choosing to be empowered by being lesser, or are we choosing resisting being lesser, and really using that as an opportunity for growth and getting strength, like Pooja was sharing. And Jim said imaginary expectation. Good point. Yes, I think, yeah, that Mother Melanie's point, yeah, was how it's connected to having expectations of ourselves. If I understood you correctly. Appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
I appreciate all these the chat points and everyone who's spoken. Yeah, and so like humility. It's there in the Shastra in many places where humility is the foundational quality for advancing. Chinada Pisni Chinatori Vashishnuna Manina Manadina Kirtana. Yeah, Sadahari. Lord Chaitanya says, from the humble, in that humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street, more tolerant than a tree, one can do kirtan all the time. And then in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Nirmana Moha Jita Sangha Dosha, lack of false pride, humility. This is the foundational quality for going back to Godhead. So related to what Pooja wrote, that humility, it's like a foundation to be open to learn and discover and grow and advance. We can like Srila Prabhupada on the Jaladuta, he's writing that he sees himself, he has no devotion and no knowledge. That Srila Prabhupada is really experiencing himself as having no devotion and no knowledge. So that humility, not artificial, that true humility moves him to even deeper determination and inspiration to serve Bhaktisiddhanta's mission. The author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he writes, he regards himself as lower than a worm in stool. He really writes that. So we think, well, so he's really seeing himself that way. So, and so then the humiliation, that's, you might say it becomes a sort of psychological, emotional excuse to not, humiliation in a sense is arrogance, right? I'm so terrible, I'm such a wretch, so I'll hide under the covers. So I use humiliation, maybe less than consciously, I use humiliation as an excuse to not enthusiastically fulfill my dharma, to not engage in inspired devotional service. So that's kind of like the test. I'm thinking also in this conversation, another amazing example of humility in our line. Sanatan Goswami, he approaches Lord Chaitanya. And Sanatan Goswami, he's practically the prime minister of the land. He's so learned, he's fluent in 6 languages, he's wealthy. And he approaches Lord Chaitanya and he says, Kayami kene amayajari tapatrai. He says, yeah, people think I'm great, people think I have it together, and I believe them, I'm such a fool. But I see that I'm suffering, I don't even know who I am. And so again, like what Pooja wrote on the chat. So then he's open, he's just like, please instruct me. Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, he has, well, I have a different view, this, that, and then at some point, okay, Shishasteham sadimam tram prapanam. Now I'm your disciple, please instruct me. So true, that spiritual humility, the test is whether it's spiritual material, is it moving us to deeper enthusiasm to grow in devotional service? Or is it moving us in the name of humility or whatever, humiliation? Is it moving us to alienate ourselves further from self-realization and Krishna consciousness?
Thank you, dear Govinda Prabhu. I liked how you pointed out that humiliation is another form of being how did you say it? Of being
Arrogant.
Yeah, being very arrogant. I see that perhaps like even like if we bring like suicidal like tendencies in, I think in the PPTC we touched the last few meetings about that, and I also I remember how Prabhupada he would express how suicide is like the last arrogance or the last pride. I'm not gonna live my life that God gave me. I'm gonna finish it and do whatever I want to do. And yeah, humiliation, I see that in a similar way, that I'm not gonna accept the teachings and the lessons and choose to be less out of choice and connect to really a sense of meekness, but I will put myself down and I'll make myself the worst just not to feel the feeling of being less. Thank you. And yeah, Trinada Pisto Nichena, that I was actually thinking, I had that in my notes and remembering that like this is like this, right, the second stanza of Lord Chaitanya's Shikshastakam pretty much, right after glorifying the holy, the Sankirtan, the glories of the holy name, he glorifies humility. And yeah, it's so beautiful and nourishing for our process, especially in this age of Kali, that as Mother Melanie shared, we have all the support, all the opportunities to be humble, and yet, yeah, it's hard. Hare Krishna.
I see that. Well, I saw that Pooja has had her hand up.
I'm sorry, I did that by accident. I'm kind of shy right now, but I was gonna say that I read a quote one day, and it said that I am a pencil in the hand of God. And when I read that quote, I thought it was so amazing because when you do go through life and you look at life that in that way, that you're simply just here and God is, Krishna is showing you on the path. So if you just follow Krishna and you humbly, follow the path and follow the path of least resistance, I feel like that right there will lead you to being humble, because you're always going to just know, well, I'm here, for specific reasons. So there's no point in fighting,
Yeah, being a pencil in the hands of God and letting him write.
Yeah, so he's guiding you. So you just follow the path.
Nice. Yeah, and being less resistant of really what God wants us to experience. And it doesn't mean that, yeah, I'm just like a complete puppet and I don't have a choice, but just being less resistant and accepting that we are souls, part and parcel of God, and we're here to connect to God's our purpose and God's purpose. That, yeah, I don't see a contradiction in the sense that we have our purpose and God has a purpose, and we both go together to share both of our gifts, God gifts and our gifts, and as long as we don't resist. Yeah.
When I've also realized when you go against, like you can tell when you're doing the wrong thing, when you're doing something that Krishna doesn't want you to do, because quickly, you get stopped in some kind of way. There's some kind of block that's put up. There's something that stops you. So then that's how you know, okay, I'm not going on the right path. So let me do this. And then when you do transition, you go into the right path, then everything is freed up for you. So that's how I know that I'm doing the right thing,
Yeah. Yeah, there are signs that God sends us that make the path less resistant. Of course, they're like healthy stretches or healthy like place to be flexible. But yeah, if it's too difficult, why are we bothering ourselves to? And then that there, as I understood, that's where you see the humiliation. That's where it starts. That I'm really going out of my comfort zone to make myself humble. Like why? Like God already gave me a natural process to be humble.
And usually someone that's teaching you something, you know, if they're chastising you for not doing something up to their standards, it don't, to me, it doesn't show anything about you, but how, you know, how they view things, and it's something that's connected to them, not you. So you shouldn't feel obligated to, I guess, show them any type of anger or
give power to their, they're forcing you to be humble, right? Which is not, that's the opposite of humility, because humility, just like love, if I force my love on someone, it's not love, it's something else. So,
yes, right.
Similar way. Yeah, I really appreciate that, Pooja. Thank you.
Thank you.
LG Harmony 3 has their hand raised.
Yes, please. Is it King? I think it's King, right?
Hare Krishna, it's Rohini.
Okay.
Hi, Rama.
Krishna,
Thank you.
Rohini.
Hare Krishna, thank you for your class, Rama. I appreciate you sharing vulnerably and also just listening to your realizations. And I'm thinking about a particular situation. I'm having a little feedback on my line, so I'm having a little echo. I'm going to talk through it. So I'm thinking about several years ago, I had a friend share with me some feedback that actually withheld energy, and I just remember when she was sharing it, I experienced feeling this like this very quiet strength that that when she was sharing it, like it felt there was maybe some anger, but it wasn't loud. It just felt like I felt like her feedback was like that's not how I saw myself, how I wanted to be seen, and I nor did I want, so I took that energy. I ended up making a boundary with this person. I actually stopped talking with them for a while, and for me that was like a declaration to Krishna, saying like, this is not who I am. I'm not who this person says I am. And so I took that opportunity in that space to really look at myself and look at the feedback and look at what was happening for me, and who I wanted to be and how I was going to move forward from there. And eventually this person and we reconciled. We're friends again, and not that we weren't friends then. I still cared and much and loved her. It wasn't even about her. It was just I needed that space to because it was like, thank you, it's like, thank you for caring enough about me to be honest. I'll carefully consider what you've said. And so that's just what's coming up for me, that situation. I'm thinking about because there was some validity in what she was sharing, although I didn't fully resonate with it. There was still something there for me that I grew from that experience. And that's what's coming up for me in this sharing. I'm thinking about this particular situation of because it was actually some really difficult feedback to hear. Like, it was like some of what she was saying, it was like, oh wow, I you're seeing me this way. This is not how I see myself or how I want to be seen. And so yeah, that's what I'd like to share. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rohini, for sharing that. Like you experience how literally the boundaries helped you to soften and to be open to perhaps the possibility of that feedback being healthy, but you took to really like shifting how your environment with that person looks like in order to give yourself power to accept humility rather than humiliation. That's how I understand it. And later on, you did see sort of maybe a possibility of how that would help you in your life to be a better person, to grow. But taking that distance and healthy boundary allowed yourself to give yourself this respect and considering yourself as someone who is really worthy of being cared for by yourself first of all. And this is how I see the main power of like being strong in humility, is like knowing what will really support us. Thank you, Rohini.
I have a comment.
Yes, please, Eza. By the way, I wanted to thank you for saying who raises the hands, because for some reason I don't see the hands.
Yes, it's because you're not the host. So yeah, that's why.
Okay.
I really appreciated the point that you made in connection with some of the chats about humiliation being like a shadow form of humility. And I found that really interesting, like the way that you said it, made me think whenever like whatever feeling the humility is overwhelming for me, or how for whatever reason I don't want to feel it, it's like I'll impose like something that's like similar enough, but it's like I'll instead shift to the humiliation, like rather than feeling wow, I don't know whatever it is, I'm not very knowledgeable, or I'm not very pure or sincere. Like if I don't want to feel the pain of that humility, it's like I'll like, it's like I can't avoid feeling pain one way or another. It's like I can experience the pure pain, or I can experience like my own manufactured pain, and how it's like a distraction from the real pain. Like then maybe I'll go into, oh, I'm so stupid or worthless. And I just find it really fascinating to see how it's like, yeah, it's like an attempt to avoid that pain. But how I can't really ultimately avoid this pain of humility. I can only like make it a different colored pain. And yeah, something about the way that you said it is really fascinating. Has me thinking about this, like conservation of energy. Energy can't be created nor destroyed. Almost like, yeah, the pain or the humility can't be destroyed either. I can only sort of change its shape to try to avoid it, but then it just becomes a different kind of pain that ultimately I think is more painful, because it's more enduring, because then I don't grow from the humility. So thank you for that point.
Yeah, thank you, Ezra. I get you. Yeah, fascinated and like emotionally and intellectually stimulated by the apparent connection. And yeah, like avoiding how I sense that you see that, yeah, avoiding the pain, we cannot avoid the pain, and the more we're trying to avoid it, the more it turns into this dark, shadowy pain, which persists, which lasts, and which is not promoting really growth either for us or for people around us. So thank you for highlighting that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Rama. I wanted to just share the thoughts that were coming through for me is that it's almost like humiliation, and if you so choose, can turn into, obviously through the pain, is into humility, to strength, and that helps to transform that diamond inside of us, like the process. So if you choose to take that humiliation and transform it, it can come out as like strength and even more self-awareness, the standing in your power. And so thank you. That's all I was running through my head real quick.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Yeah, I feel that as like an extension of what Eza was sharing, that yeah, the core is the same thing, and we are in choice to let it destroy us, that same energy, or let it really seed seed the seed of sincerity in our heart to growth and polishing the diamond of our heart. Yeah, I think Lord Chaitanya, he speaks right about in his Shikshastakam, these 8 stanzas, that he describes the glories of the holy name, and he describes the holy name as blazing fire. And now, like hearing yours and Ezra sharings about how that same blazing fire can turn to be something destructive, but it can be something polishing, something clearing, something purifying and energizing and stimulating, giving us strength to continue on our devotional spiritual journey.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you for class. I wanted to just share, it's probably the whole class, but from as he's sharing, my mind like opened up, because when he was saying humility, there's pain in humility, and the first response I had was like, there's not pain in humility. Humility, I guess I had this feeling that humility, like humble, like there was no pain there. And sometimes that's true, I think, for me. It just depends maybe on the circumstance. But so it's both from what Ezzy shared and then this whole class, but I see that sometimes there is pain in humility, like the more willingness to, be with whatever maybe is coming through that experience. I also experience sometimes humility like in a very joyful way as well. But so from his sharing specifically, it was like really opened up something, and then that whole humiliation, humility, strength, really beautiful. So thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, like I said, joyful, because if I can connect with some drops of humility, then it's quite a relief. It can be quite liberating. I mean, it can also be like experiencing the pain of feeling fallen and all of that, but quite a relief, because like I'm letting down the mask of look, I'm great, I'm this, I'm that, and letting down all that pretense which we tend to spend so much energy putting up. So I appreciate how you said joyful, because I can relate. It can be quite a liberating relief. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, the true humility causes lightness and joyfulness. And yeah, I appreciate that point, dear Govinda. Thank you. Thank you, everybody who joined and participated and shared being stimulated and excited by the topic. I'm heading next tomorrow, I think Tuesday. I'm planning to take a break from my ordinary world and go and sort of like isolate myself and think about this concept and many others, and gonna make a video about this topic and share it with the rest of the world. So thank you for giving all these like so much for me to think about and work with. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. I feel very, very supported and cared and loved and humbled and in a healthy way.
Thank you, Ramachandra. Hare Krishna.
Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.